Most self-improvement coaches are full of crap. I'll repeat that again. Most self-improvement coaches are full of crap. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Most people who come on the internet to talk about how you can improve your life and how they have, quote unquote, found nirvana and they found this flow in their life where they can just find success, get stuff done, and they try to pass on that information to you, and obviously they mean well, right? They're not trying to be arrogant or they're not trying to be boastful, but they're just trying to pass on some knowledge that has helped them. And so that is to be commended, because what you find is that many people who become successful rarely will give any intel as to how they reached that point. But the problem is, there is this idealistic approach to self-improvement, which unfortunately it makes it so that these coaches have to come across as if they're perfect, as if they've always they live a certain way, a strict way in which they live day to day, and it comes across as fake. At least to those with keen eyes, it comes across as fake. We're all human. We're not machines. No one can, or I should say, most people aren't maintaining, for example, a fasting regimen, intermittent fasting regime, or eating a strict diet. Now, some people are, but I would say a lot of these people fall under the spectrum. A lot of these people are somewhat abnormal or special, right? But most people, the regular person, is not living this way. And most of what they try to preach to you is just ideal or idealistic habits or routines that work in theory and are sound good advice. But in terms of applying that to the real world with your real life routines and schedules and your lifestyles, it often isn't compatible, And so that's why a lot of the self-improvement coaches come across as fake. And to be honest, I think the self-improvement genre on the internet has died down. I think a lot of people kind of see it as a fad. They've came and they've gone. But the thing about self-improvement is that most of us are going to fail, right? Most of us, for example, will try to start a new diet. We would say something like, okay, we'll start on Monday. Monday will be a fresh start, a clear slate for me to begin this protocol. But sometimes that only lasts a day or two. You were so motivated on the weekend, but that motivation did not succeed. So you stopped, even though you know that was the right thing to do. All the planning, you've got your meal prep, you've got your utensils and cutlery, you've got the fresh meat or whatever regime you're following, but you're not following through. And that's procrastination. Procrastination is the real killer. Procrastination is the real demon that needs to be slayed. Many of us are waiting for the perfect moment on the right day when the air temperature is just right. But unfortunately, there is no perfect moment. And as every minute goes by, that's every minute of our life that we've lost. And I reiterate this as someone who's, some of have become a parent. What else has happened? Moved to a new home, but more obviously gotten older, right? These are very life-changing things that can happen in life. For some people, it halts their progression and development. For others, it causes confusion and frustration that, oh, now, they have so much responsibilities now. It causes people to freeze. And I think others, it causes them to really dig deep and find real inspiration to change their life and embark on a new lifestyle. So yeah, I can easily use these things as an excuse for why perhaps I'm not as hot on self-improvement, or why I haven't been focused enough to make more videos regarding self-improvement. But another aspect that I think not a lot of people talk about is aging. Aging and how it affects your will and enthusiasm to progress on the right path in life. No one talks about that. And I think especially after the pandemic, a lot of us that lived through that, I believe we've lost about 2 years of life experience. The time we would have spent traveling, meeting new people, different things, we've lost it because of the pandemic. So, for some of us, we might feel like we're 2 years older than what we should be. But I've mentioned this in a prior video in the past, that there are obviously different stages to life. There is a time to be, let's take an athlete for example. There's a time to be that jock, star of the team, ace player. And then there is a time to take it easy and maybe coach, hand down your knowledge, right? And also there was a time to prepare and to train and to build yourself up. Different stages. I think many people are frozen in fear of aging, but we don't talk about it. And so what I think tends to happen is that a lot of people end up becoming late bloomers and heighten the risk of a crisis in the future in their lives. As in my opinion, I'll just say it as I think it. In my opinion, I think for men, by age 35, I think many of us are going to ask ourselves a lot of questions. I think 35 is something of a spiritual middle age, right? And it's not necessarily middle age crisis, but I think deep into our subconscious, there are just ages, time, and although time is meaningless, it's a made up thing that we made up, it's still in the back of our minds. I think for women it's like late 20s, 30, but for men it's about 35 when you start to question, is this the path that I'm supposed to be on? Is this path working? Where am I going in life? What is the future? Okay? 30 more years, you're going to be an old man. You're going to be elderly. And so it's as if those who are responsible, we're trying to prepare for that. And when it comes to self-improvement, the thing with aging is that aging reduces our level of enthusiasm. And I think that's natural. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, again, with the stage of life, our energy levels naturally decline. We all know this. Men, our testosterone naturally decline. And I think rather than accept this, a lot of men are trying to oppose it, bend it, and twist reality. A lot of guys go on to TRT. A lot of guys, and I've been in a position where I'm talking about, how to boost testosterone, quote unquote, talking about Tonkat Ali and all these other ways to do that, right? Which is fine, but the natural development is the natural development. It's just the way of life. And I think people are just not accepting that fact or reality. So it's as if people are trying to avoid the truth, right? So it's much easier to be motivated in self-development, self-improvement, in my opinion, in your teens and 20s than it will be in your 30s, especially again after 35, right? And you know, a good example of that would be the gym, because the gym, a lot of people on self-improvement, for a lot of people, that is the first point of transformation. That is the first place where you see changes in your body and your mindset just by attending the gym, just by following a training regime, right? But naturally, there's going to be a difference between a 20-year-old pursuing that and a 40-year-old pursuing that. Hormones are different. Motivation is different. Enthusiasm is different. Energy levels are different. That's natural stuff. But I think, again, a lot of guys are trying to put all of that on hold or trying to avoid the truth, the reality that there are different stages of life again. Sometimes we need to put our foot down on the pedal. Sometimes we need to ease off. But going back to parenting, I think a lot of people use parenting as an excuse. In my opinion, parenting hasn't made me feel like I've lost time. In fact, parenting has just made me sharper. Parenting, running a household, has made me more accountable. And that's the thing with when I was a bachelor, living the single lifestyle, living alone, is that no one really held me to account. I can do whatever I want. A lot of people do things, shady things that no one can judge them on, sneaking into places in the night, you know? Not their proudest moments in life. But again, you can do these things, no one will judge you. But what you find as a single bachelor is that you waste a lot of time and energy engaging in these mostly meaningless things. In my opinion, being a parent has given me the motivation that doesn't require momentary inspiration, if you know what I mean. I look my child in the eye every day and I am held to account. You know, I think some people find that to be imprisoning. Some people think you become a slave. But in reality, whether you are childless or a parent, we are slaves in this world, right? We are slaves to ensuring that a household is maintained. My house is fully paid off, but I'm still going to have to pay for the energy that I use, the water that I use, internet. So there's no point trying to avoid this reality. But I think it's rather best to find the superior strategy that will keep us motivated for the long term. So again, it goes back to the beginning. A lot of self-improvement coaches, don't care how big or small they are, they run into the same problem. For most younger people, their motivation is usually going to be around money, women, and some sort of lifestyle that makes them feel quote unquote free or boost their ego a little bit, makes them feel that they've arrived, quote unquote. So I don't know, living in or working in Canary Wharf, wearing a suit to work, you know, working for some corporation, some people feel like that's them, they've arrived. But for the long term, again, when we move into different stages of life, I don't feel like, or I don't think like that is long-term motivation, you know? Obviously everyone's different, but again, my observation is that people fall in and fall out of this self-improvement lifestyle. In fact, a lot of people who reach this point, maybe it's a financial figure, get their 100K, a lot of people pull the brakes on and ease up on self-improvement. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, again, stages of life. There is time to ease up, there is time to go full throttle. But if easing up means going back to an unhealthy lifestyle, a stagnant lifestyle, a lifestyle that bred depression and lethargy, disappointment, unhappiness, loneliness, then I think that's the worst case scenario, right? So I'm not trying to say, because I know some of you guys might be thinking, hey, are you shaming us for being childless? No, I'm not trying to say you need a child for long-term motivation, but I think we all need to find that source of everlasting motivation. I don't believe things and money, materials, cars are good enough or strong enough as a tether to maintain that focus and self-improvement. Trust me. When I was living that single bachelor lifestyle, I had my motorbike, I had all these things, gadgets, tech, everything that I need really. Freedom, quote unquote, to travel anywhere. I came back from these countries and they all became meaningless, trivial things, temporary things, things that come into your life and just disappear. So again, stage of life, there's a time to experience these things, and I promote, especially younger people or inexperienced people, to go out and experience things, but long term, will those things hold your focus? So this could be a reason why you're just not focused enough when it comes to your self-development, seeing yourself improve and get into positions that you'd wish or always wish that you'd get into. Could be career, could be job, money, housing, right? The why you want these things need to be very strong. And again, often I find that if the why is monetary, if it's material based, it's just not going to be strong enough for you. So you find yourself, kind of doing like a yo-yo diet. You're focused one week, you've lost focus the other week. So you end up not being consistent with your goal because the why is not strong enough. Now again, let me reiterate, I'm not trying to say you need to go and get your lady pregnant, get a kid so you can expect yourself to be more focused in life. No, that's not how it works. But all I'm saying is that from my experience, my life and my mindset is much more focused now as a parent than it was as a single guy, again, with very little responsibilities and only living for myself, doing whatever I need to do for myself. But that's just me. Everyone's different. So I understand kids aren't for everyone, right? Obviously. But I think what I've realized over the years is that whatever your goal is, for it to be thorough and strong, it needs to be in service to other people. That's why I use the example as a parent. I think my will is stronger because I'm working and striving for something or someone other than myself, right? So I think that's necessary for an iron will when it comes to self-improvement. And I think that's what you need to figure out. If you want that focus and clarity and consistency in this realm. And this is why I've opposed the whole lone wolf lifestyle rhetoric, because in my humble opinion, I know some of you are going to get offended, but it leads to nothing. because you're not in service to anyone. You don't have someone putting you up to account that will push you up to higher plateaus. Often, a lot of people that claim lone wolf lifestyles live a very, to say it nicely, mediocre lifestyles. They don't really aspire for much. They don't really want much. They think that, hey, I'm sorted. I have 3 square meals a day. I have a bed to lay in, regardless of if it's in a box studio, wherever. For them, because they're satisfied, that's their lot in life. And that's fine if you're truly happy with that, but I find that many people deep down aren't satisfied with that. Many people are resentful because they don't have the lifestyle that other people have. Many YouTubers complain regularly because of that fact. But when you hear some of these YouTubers talk, their aspirations are very materialistic. It's not about service to others. It's not about, service to others is what propels ideas that changes the way we live. These cameras that I'm using, a person thought about these ideas. We need people. Anyone that refutes that is just, in my opinion, most likely unsuccessful. You can't be a success on your own. No one can be an island. Not in this economy, not in this society. It doesn't work like that. Even in the caveman days, what's the point of, why would you want to hunt out alone? Surely you're stronger with 10, 20, 50 man with you. Then we can all eat. Going back to the stages and age, I believe that, again, by age 35, at the very least, men should have a career that gives them a certain amount of focus, that pushes them. You don't have to be super joy that you have to get up on a Monday for 9 o'clock, right, to work in an office, but that's still a minimum level of focus that gets you up, right? And then it's your responsibility to find some drive, look to the next thing, maybe a promotion or learning some new software so you can advance, or maybe move out to something else completely different. That's our responsibility. But I think, again, by 35, a lot of people will start questioning. And honestly, by that age, I think a lot of people will be doubtful. A lot of people will be low on energy. A lot of people find it harder and harder to summon motivation, to be inspired, to go out and get it. And physically, naturally, again, we will have lesser energy. And, people are going to refute this because obviously this is the internet. So people think they have all the answers to natural developments that we all go through and have been through for an eternity, right? Oh, do cold showers, that's gonna expand your life and slow your aging process. Or go into ketosis, because the ketones are gonna self-heal all your organs and make you brand new. All these gimmicks are just ways for people to avoid or avert the truth and the progression, And I think talking about motivation in terms of making these videos, I think that is a key motivator for me, to make sure people don't fall into that trap of deferring and escaping the fact. Because these days people can expand the sort of child stage of their lives. People can just bunker in their parents' home, play video games. I know that's a cliche, but talking about video games, I like video games. I like video games. But there's a time and a place. There are limitations to what you can do. 35 and I don't know, maybe you're in a bind, you're in a lot of debt, a lot of loans, credit cards, then you're probably living in some box apartment, studio flat, £1,000 plus council, all of that might make you want to go and live with your parents. And many of us, will be a single parent, you want to go and live with your mother. And I think that will be hard for your psyche to cope with, because being put back in that position puts us in a very infant-like position. I remember when I did that, what year was this, 2017? Where I was just living all over the city. That was one of my goals in the past, to live in the four quadrants of London, north, east, south, west. So I think one winter, I just wanted to consider staying over in my mum's house over the Christmas. I've never actually, when it comes to Christmas, I'm usually there 1-2 days and I'm out. Just family dynamics you don't want to return to, and kind of be treated like a child in a way. But what I found when I did that was that my lifestyle became softer. Living alone, I had this strict regimen, and I wasn't loaded, so it means that my diet and stuff were very strict, rigid. My fridge, sometimes it's bare, which is good, but if I open the fridge of my mum's house, full of muffins and all this stuff that's just naturally not good for me. All my strict protocol, I was losing. I was trying to maintain, go for hill sprints every Sunday morning, but I just didn't feel like it anymore because my life became much more comfortable. And I know a lot of people's motivation to go back to move back home is that, back with family, is that, they can save a whole bunch of money and stuff like that. But sometimes the payoff, the trade-off is not good. That's why I've said in the past that, and I still think it, that even though it might not be the most financially beneficial thing to do, you need to experience living by yourself as soon as you can, as soon as it's possible. Yeah, it's going to be, and just to experience paying a high amount on bills is a reflection of the reality, what most people are dealing with. But I think the key of what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if I've pointed out, is that we needed to have been prepped for life since childhood. And this goes in line with procrastination, knowing how to save, delay gratification, just knowing how to budget, and not in a material sense, just in a mental sense, knowing how to restrict yourself, limit yourself, how to be patient and wait. These are core fundamental skills that we learn when we're young, right? So if we don't have these things installed in us, often as adults trying to get into that mindset, it's too late. That's the cold, hard reality, and why a lot of people fail self-improvement, why a lot of people can't be motivated, why a lot of people suffer to lethargy, is that they weren't given the software to have that mentality. Or let me say it better, they weren't given the tools to have that mentality. And this is why I often go hard against bad families, bad parents, parents who had kids when they really shouldn't have, single parents who typically don't have enough time, don't give their kids enough attention, put their kids in harm's way via the different men that they bring back in, or the different women even that they bring in. A lot of these people become victims of SA. A lot of these people live in poor areas and have to succumb to criminals and being robbed. And a lot of people growing up in poor areas become the criminals, and again, in line with delayed gratification, rather than wait and save for the new trainers that they want, they will just go and grab it. Just snatch it off of someone. That's the reality. So when you think about it, a lot of this becomes a social economic issue from the very beginning. It's harsh, but in my opinion, I think people would prefer to not be born rather than to be put in a very harsh situation in life. You know, I think it's very unfair because a lot of us just won't make it. If you don't have a sort of strong will, extreme mindset, and you're placed into hard mode in life, it's not fair and you probably won't make it. This is why a lot of people relapse when it comes to their self-improvement protocol. This is why it feels almost impossible to follow to change your habit. Even though we all know it takes about 3 weeks roughly to basically reinforce a new habit into our lifestyles, it still feels hard. And you know, there comes to a point where it's not just simply about willpower, it's about whether in your formative years you've been given the tools to help you adapt, to change your life, right? You can only do so much with willpower. Willpower is like just running a car on fumes. You need the fuel. The fuel comes from your personality traits that's hardwired into you, that affects you on a hormonal level, on a cellular level. And that comes from, yeah, sure, part of it is nature, right? Your genetics. But I think the most impressionable part is nurture. How you've been raised, how you've been trained. A lot of people get so caught up on genetics, which just gives a lot of people a big self-defeatist mentality, mindset. So it's like, why even start to begin with? And that's false because it just makes people want to lean into a bad lifestyle, right? Or into a losing position. But take martial arts, for example. Anyone who puts themselves into the weekly training, right, will develop a sufficient amount of skill that will help them to defend themselves, okay? Because it's just basically practice. But obviously there are some people who are born with a genetic gift that will allow them to be superior than others in the martial art. You know, for example, Taekwondo, a kicking martial art, if you've got long legs, if you're tall, you have a natural advantage in Taekwondo. But to activate that genetic gift, you still need to practice. You can't just show up and be better than a short, stubby person who's been practicing for the last 20 years. So it's almost like if you believe that genetically you are not gifted and that motivates you to just quit because other people have gifts that you don't, then you're not even going to reach a certain level that's going to make you feel content. And this is why, again, a lot of, obviously black pillars, right, are the most obvious example of this. A lot of them feel like that. A lot of people look at that guy with the jawline. Look at that guy. He's 6'8". Oh, I just can't compete. And this is the mindset that breeds or that accelerates a loss of focus and motivation when it comes to self-improvement as well. I know I've probably gone on a tangent, but I just had to distill all of what I generally think about, It just really saddens me when I see a lot of young people who feel like they can't progress in life And I know what it is. It's the mentality, it's the psychology. I think, of course, I feel very empathetic when I see younger people who feel like they can't achieve the things that they want to achieve in life, people who feel stuck. And I agree with a lot of how they feel. They feel like the world is against them. Economics play a big part in it. Things such as the rate of inflation dictates how we can live our lives. And yes, it definitely dictates how successful we can be in the world. And even to a genetic point, right? Some people are just hardwired to certain self-limiting beliefs about themselves, right? It's not easy. It's not easy to be focused. It's not easy to be motivated or to retain the inspiration for motivation. But I think it's very easy in this digital age with all this technology to lean into a life of lethargic, slothful lifestyles. And this is the biggest ensnarement. This is the biggest trap, right? Being lethargic, not feeling like you have a focus or a purpose in life, but then when you multiply it with the technology, with our ability to live online, to socialize online, and this also boosts our confidence in thinking that we can just be alone. We don't need people. We don't need to deal with real people. It makes us. It only serves to ensnare us, right? To put us in a trap. I remember at some point, again, going back to that single bachelor lifestyle, where I felt like all I needed, just my own little space, my online activities, my games, and a job, and that's it. I'm set, right? But in reality, for me, that's just not good enough. That's not a meaningful life to live. Very quickly, you're going to feel fed up of that lifestyle. There's going to be bored. There's going to be a desensitizing effect. For example, when all your social life just comes from social media, your body, your hormones, it needs to feel the touch of a person, the voice, the breath of a living being. You can't just be on a keyboard all day. That's not good enough, you know? And it makes me, I go back to the idea of being a lone wolf. In reality, what being a lone wolf does, if you isolate yourself from society, what tends to happen, and I'm sure many of you have experienced it, is that your social skills just atrophy, meaning that your social skills reduce. You find it harder to maintain a conversation. If you rely so much on the internet for communication, internet communication is very shallow. It's very abbreviated. It's very short to the point. And when it comes to long form, if you try and write a paragraph in someone's comment sections, it will barely be read. And so if this is how you're communicating, if this is how you're living, your real life skills, the soft skills, will decline. And that will affect your future relationships. That's why I've always spoken against Tinder and dating app usage, because in the long run, it just has a negative effect on your social skills, on your expectations. But yeah, that's why I've said why I'm against Tinder. Obviously, there's many other reasons, demographical reasons, social reasons why the dating apps might work for certain people. But in the long run, it just has a harmful effect on our ability to relate with others in the real world, in a real way, you know. And again, often these things, these online habits provide a sort of shield that we can exist in, we can use to, again, try to evade the harsh truth that allows us to cope. To get things done, you need to be in the real world. But that's a topic for another day. But I think if there's anything you take from this video, is to be mindful of the fact that time is ticking. There is a massive correlation with age and motivation. Okay? I bet money that, for example, the 50-year-old personal trainer, while it's good, you know, any certification, qualification attained is good, but who really wants to be doing jumping jacks, teaching classes, which is stuff that, as a trainer, you know, a lot of personal trainers do to supplement their lifestyle. Who really wants to be doing all that at age 60? You know, again, going back to the stages of life, there is a time and there is a place. I think a personal trainer at 30, even in her 20s, will be much more impressive, much more enthusiastic, much more on point and willing to learn the science and all the research, biomechanics, exercises, right, than a 50-year-old who's gone into that field. That's a good example, in my opinion, of how motivation declines with time. So it's critical that people understand and realize the stage of life that they're in. And even if you're behind, you can still refocus and realign to whatever you believe you should be in, you know, in terms of your own self-development. But ultimately, this video, I just really wanted to test out this camera. Let me know what you think of this camera. It might be in full 360. If so, you can already tilt the camera or your phone around to see different angles, or it might just be edited, so it's more like a third-person view. I don't know yet. I will be making more videos in the future. If you have any requests, let me know. Anything that you want me to go a bit more deeper in from this video, write in the comments below. Let me know. You can like the video, subscribe if you're new. Let me know how it's going for you in terms of how motivated you are with self-improvement. I think for many more people, self-improvement, or the reason why people seek self-improvement, is really people need more money. I think that is the key. You know, people, for whatever reason, didn't do too well in university or in other formal education. Maybe they failed, and then they're thrown into the real world and they have to start from a sort of low-paying job. And again, this is the dangers of a self-limited mindset. For whatever reason, you believe this is your job for life. You don't really believe that you can learn other skills that can put you in other fields. And this is really the danger of a self-limited mindset. And it really affects you as time goes by, because you start to believe the illusion, almost, the dream, the nightmare that you've succumbed to. When really, I think most people don't even utilize the full potential of their brains. And again, this goes back to being held to account. If you have no coach or trainer to push you, who's going to know if you really did 100 punches, you know, on the bag? Who's really going to push you when you're out of breath and you're gassed and you can't go on much longer? This is the importance of a coach. I'm not trying to say you need me as a YouTuber, but I'm just saying in general, if you are devoid of people in your life, then you won't have people to push and motivate you when you are not fulfilling your own true potential. Again, the dangers of living that self-isolation lifestyle, right? But I think I've belabored the point. Let me know your perspective and your points of view in the comments section below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.